All right, I'm live. Hey, everybody, thanks for coming in this morning. Funny thing happened yesterday. Today's Monday morning. It's April 6th of 2020. And yesterday I must have slept really, really well the night before because I got up around 6 something to take the dog out and came into my office and I started working. I started getting ready for the chat on listening, and I had a couple of blog posts that I was going to work on, and I had a 9 o'clock meeting that I was going to do, and all this stuff. And I worked for 45 minutes, and then I realized it was not Monday morning; it was Sunday morning. It was so funny. So, anyways, this Corona's got us all down in a weird place. So, anyways. I'm glad it's Monday, but it was nice to have a bonus day in the weekend. All right, so I told you on Friday that I would tell a little bit of the backstory of this course called Becoming a Better Listener, and so it's actually kind of funny. So I had been working really hard on some courses that felt difficult, like they felt like I had to do a lot of research and a lot of thinking. And of course, every time I get a Pluralsight course done, I say I've birthed another course. Like it's really a big process and extremely frustrating. Sorry, there's an echo because I'm watching myself. Watch myself. It's meta. So anyways, so I sent my friend Kirk an email and I said, hey, you manage developers. I would love to get a list of courses that you want your developers to watch. Like give me some ideas of things that you would love them to be trained in and things that you could talk about as a team and stuff like that. And so he sent that to his boss, who was VP, and that boss wrote back with like 4 or 5 ideas and paragraphs describing what he wanted. And I thought, man, this is really cool. So this is probably around the time where I kind of felt like I was running out of ideas, but I was also very intent on, actually, I'm just realizing just now, I'm realizing that what I did was I listened to this other guy. And the value that I got out of that was really big. So anyways, so I'm coming down from these really heavy courses that were exhausting. And so I get this list from the VP of a customer, and he's like, well, here's 5 soft skills that I would love courses on for my developers and my IT staff. And I was looking at those and I'm like, I need something easy. I need something that is not going to take a lot of work, something that's not going to like mentally fry me because I'm coming out of mentally fried. And I was like, okay, this one right here, this is the easiest of all the 5. It was on listening. How hard can that be? I've been listening my entire life, I think. I mean, really, I've been hearing. I didn't know that I wasn't listening necessarily. And so anyways, I jumped into this course, and as I started putting together the table of contents and stuff, I was really disillusioned with like, nobody's going to want to watch this. What a boring topic. Like, who doesn't know how to listen, and who would actually choose to watch a course on how to listen? And I don't know, maybe that sounds funny to you, because when I tell other people this story, they're like, yeah, hello, a lot of people need to learn to listen. Well, it turns out that this is one of my most popular courses, most watched courses, and it's multiples more popular than some of the other courses. I just looked at the stats this morning, and it has 533 ratings, and the average is 4.5 stars. The rating itself, the average rating doesn't impress me, but the fact that over 500 people have clicked to rate it, because a lot of people don't rate. And if you're a Pluralsight customer, please go rate, because we like that feedback. We need that feedback. But there was over 500 people who have rated, and that's a big deal for me. For me, it's a big deal. I mean, there's some courses on Pluralsight that have thousands of ratings. I don't have courses that popular. The other thing that was really interesting was that it has right now 235 comments, and I love that. I honestly love it when people who watch the course come in and they ask questions, or they share ideas, or they share what they got out of the course or whatever, and it's meaningful for me. Like, it helps me know that I'm actually making a difference, and I made an impact on you, and that's really cool. So once again, go comment on courses that you watch, wherever you watch them. I should say, of those 235, maybe half of them are mine, because somebody will comment and then I'll respond back. So for sure, a lot of the comments are mine, but still, there's easily over 100 comments from other people. And this is not true for the rest of my courses. I don't have 530 ratings and hundreds of comments. So my idea that this was going to be a course that nobody would watch turned out to be completely wrong, which is great. I mean, I love that. And now I get to play Monday morning quarterback, right? And so I'm sitting here looking at this and I'm thinking, okay, well, of course this is a popular course. Maybe not because people are saying, oh, I wish I could learn how to become a better listener, that this is a skill that I'm ready to go work on. But maybe it's more because people's bosses are saying, hey, before you go into that meeting, please go watch this course, because there's some skills and tactics that I want you to brush up on so that you come across better in that meeting. So if you think about it, the stereotype of an IT person it isn't necessarily very good, right? So the stereotype of an IT person is that we are wicked smart. And I'm including me in that, because I used to be active in the IT space, the dev space. We're wicked smart, but we're not really good with humans, right? We're good with keyboards and maybe ones and zeros, but we're not very good communicating outbound, like the words we say or how we say it. We don't have a good reputation for being great communicators. I've actually gotten off stage sometimes for my presentations, and people come up and say, wow, it's amazing that someone who used to be a developer can speak like that on stage. And I was like, I don't understand what you're talking about. But the stereotype is that anybody involved in computers doesn't do well communicating outbound. And then listening is communicating inbound, right? It's like what we're taking in. And so I think that, playing Monday morning quarterback, this really was a great topic, because not only am I helping people develop their skills in an area where people think they don't have the skills, like outside of IT doesn't think that we in IT have these skills. These really are important skills, and they're awesome skills to have. So just real quick, a question says, would you say you aren't an expert on a course before you create it? I don't know how to answer that. My LinkedIn courses have taken me like 2 hours to do, because I've done LinkedIn webinars and training and consultation hundreds and hundreds of times. And so for me to figure out what a LinkedIn course would be, I have 2 LinkedIn courses right now. It's really fast, because I've done it in my sleep. I mean, I literally will dream about that stuff. But when you get another topic like this one, like becoming a better listener, to prepare a course, and I call my courses beginner courses, it's something that I've been doing and I think about. I love people. I love soft skills. I love professional development. I think I'm good at a lot of these soft skills, but I want to create something that is more than a list that you're going to find on a blog post, right? And really, when I first sit down with my topic, I can list out like 10 or 15 or 20 things that I want to talk about. And I'm like, yeah, this would create a beefy blog post, but I don't want the 1 to 2 hours that you're going to spend in my course feel like I'm just going through a blog post, right? And so to answer your question, I honestly don't feel like I'm an expert in a lot of things. I'm thinking about these things and I'm practicing these things, but I'm not PhD level. I haven't written a book on becoming a better listener. Here's where I'm coming from. I've been a manager, I've been a boss, and I wrote about this on Twitter once. The way I think about my courses is I think about this guy named Todd. And Todd, if you're out there in the world, hello. I worked with Todd. He wasn't on my team. He was an accounting intern at a company that I worked at years ago. And man, this kid was wet behind the ears and just excited and just a really, really fun, cool guy. But he would come into my office and ask me advice on stuff, right? And I had this different perspective than him. And I kind of, for not being as direct manager, I kind of took him under my wing, and I really enjoyed the conversations we had. And he listened to a lot of the stuff, the advice and stuff that I would give him. And it was a rewarding relationship for me. And so when I create courses, a lot of times Todd's my audience. I'm thinking about somebody that's pretty new, somebody who is really interested in making changes and will listen to the changes and actually practice them. And so I'm not talking to someone who, has decades of experience, been trying to listen, and they're at a different level. I'm going more for the Todd. Now, having said that, like I said on Friday, I really try and leave everything on the field, right? So my listening course could have been 20 minutes long of me reading stuff that could have been in a blog post, but I really went a lot further than that. So would I say I'm an expert or not an expert? I'm not even sure that after I do the course, after weeks and weeks of deep study and critical thinking about what goes into the course and then presenting it, that I'm an expert on it, but I definitely am developing some level of expertise on it. Another way to kind of talk about that is I've thought, what if I were to go get a job as a manager? Because I'm an entrepreneur and I work in my home office. What if I were to go get a job as a manager somewhere? And people are like, oh yeah, look at all these courses Jason did. He's an expert on this and this and this and this and this. And then I go in there and I have a bad day and I don't listen well, or I communicate poorly or something like that. And so I'm like, yeah. So anyways, it is interesting sharing these courses, but very interesting question. Thank you. Let's go back into listening. So what are the benefits of listening? Why do we want to become a better listener? I think that it's our role and our opportunity to always shatter the stereotypes that developers in IT have. It's not something that we have to do. It's not really an obligation. And I don't feel like we're all on a mission that we need to go shatter and show people that we actually do know how to communicate and listen and all that stuff. But man, it is really fun when someone's like, are you sure you're a developer? Because you actually have people skills, And so it's an opportunity that we have to improve in that area. So here's some of the benefits of becoming a better listener that I listed. I think that when we are better listeners, we can have better relationships, and that's pretty obvious. But our relationships can really go into a deeper place than what we really thought possible, and they can be meaningful and they can be long lasting. Now, back in the 80s, the 1980s, that was good and fun and rewarding to have better relationships. But generally in the 80s, in your career, you worked at a company for decades, and it wouldn't be uncommon for you to, get out of school, go work for a company, and then retire from that company, right? Like that's not unheard of. And nowadays, I mean, how many people could say that? Even people nowadays in 2020, how many people are working at a place that they started at 10, 20, or 30 years ago, as their first job? It is really common that we're transitioning every 2 to 5. The federal government says every 2 to 5 years, but really what I'm seeing is every 2 to 3 years. And even if you're staying in the same company, you're going to different departments. That might be, if it's a really big company like HP or something like that, then you can go from one department to another department, and it feels like you're in a completely different company, right? And so what I really want to do is I want to nurture professional relationships. And one of the ways that I do that is I'm there not just when I need something from that person. And it's not like a flyby where like once every 2 or 3 years, I'm like, hey, it's me again. How are things going? And then I'll do that every 2 or 3 years. Like I really want to know about the person, and I want to know what their needs are and their issues are and how I can help them and what their wins have been and all of these different things. So better relationships. When you're a better listener, you help other people feel, I wrote 2 V words here, validated. And I had to put that was the first thing that popped into my mind. I've been married for almost 25 years now, and I've heard the word validated more than once in my marriage. So I think that as we become better listeners, the people that are communicating with and to us will feel validated in whatever message it is that they're trying to get across to us. And the other one is valued. We want our relationships to feel valued. We value them. Like generally, we value our contacts, our network contacts, our relationships, but they don't always feel valued, right? I mean, this is a parenting thing. How many times do our kids, or how many times did we as kids not feel valued in our family environment? And if you sit down with someone today and you really listen to them, right? A lot of the tactics and the ideas that I talk about in the course, and we'll talk about some of those today. When you really listen to someone, you feel valued, right? It's just awesome. Just take a second and think about somebody who listens to you. Who's the person who you know you can talk to and they're really going to hear you? They're going to hear what you're talking about. They're going to hear what your concerns are. They're going to hear what your ideas are, right? I have a friend of mine. I met him when I was 19 or 20. His name is Kyle. And this guy, he makes you feel like you're the only person that matters in the world. It is the most amazing thing to spend 5 or 10 minutes or an hour or 2 hours with this guy, because it feels like the world stops and you are important to him. It's amazing. And I'm 40 something now. So for the last 25 or so years, I've been thinking about how I felt around Kyle and how he made me feel because he listened. And today we're friends. I actually just chatted with him a couple of days ago. But the feelings of being validated and valued from him were so powerful. So I would do anything for Kyle, really. I would give him anything that I could. And it has a lot to do with the fact that we have this relationship where I feel valued and validated from him. Another great reason to become a better listener is because when we listen, I'm going right into the business analyst, project manager, product manager, developer space. When we listen, we have less problems in our projects, right? So when we listen to our customers and understand what they need, we have a better, we deliver better what they're asking for, even if they don't say the words, because listening is more than just what you hear from your ears. But when they are asking for something, good listeners are going to have two-way conversation that's not just taking stuff in, but it's going to go back a few times until you really understand what they want. Actually, I got a really cool story about that. I'm pretty sure I can tell this story. I don't think this is confidential, so I'll tell this story. So when I first started with Pluralsight, my first course was on LinkedIn because that's the book that I wrote, and then my expertise, because of Jibber Jobber, was helping job seekers, and I spoke to a lot of job seekers, and that's where my brain was: careers and job search and branding and stuff like that really had a lot to do with you and your career, and not as much to do with you as an employee. And so I was at a conference, this is years ago, and I found a few sales guys standing in the hallway, and I went up and I said, "Hey, I'm Jason Albin. I've done a few courses on this stuff. And I'm wondering, Guys, this is a great example of what you should do to people at your organization, especially if you're looking for product ideas. Go to the sales team, because the sales people are the ones who know why they're winning or losing contracts, right? They have a really good pulse on what the customers want. And I said to this one salesman, I said, well, this group, but it was really a conversation with me and this one guy. I said, what are courses that you want? What are courses that I could create, soft skill courses that would help you sell more Pluralsight? That's a good question, right? And he says, that's easy. Everybody is asking for management courses. They want a course on management. And I said, okay, great, awesome. What does that mean? What is management? Now you have to understand that, and this goes back to the question from Frizz Clips, would I say I'm an expert on the course before I create it? I had a business degree, computer information systems, and an MBA, and I had worked as a general manager, and I had been in management positions most of my career. And I would read everything I could get my hands on, with magazines and stuff. I love the idea of management and stuff like that. And so, but I asked him, he said, everybody wants a course on management. And I was like, excellent. I'm there, could totally do that. What does management mean? Now, I knew what I thought management meant, and I could easily go to Google or the dictionary and see what management meant. I could go look in other course websites and look at what those management courses were. But my question to him was, what does management mean? Specifically, what are they asking about? And he went on to tell me, right? So he went on to say, oh, well, they want a course that talks about this and this and this and this and this and this. And every single thing that he said was not management. You see what's going on here? My bullet point that I was just mentioning as a benefit of becoming a better listener is that when we're a better listener, we have less reworking. We actually get the right product. The end result is what they want, right? And if I would have taken his first information and went and created a course on management, it would have been fine. It really would have been fine. It wouldn't have been bad, okay? But I drilled down. I was an active listener. I wanted to really understand what he was and wasn't saying. I asked more questions, and I found out that he wanted a course on management, which is the title or the word, right? But the topics were really on leadership. Isn't that interesting? So I went back to my contact at Pluralsight and I said, hey, when I'm done with this course, which was, I don't remember what it was, but it was kind of job search related. I said, when I'm done with this course, I am going to switch gears and go from personal career stuff, which by the way, I've already done a few of those and I feel like I'm good. I feel fleshed out in that area. I'm going to switch over to really was professional development. And this is an area that I didn't understand until I asked the right person the right question, and then asked another right question and another right question. And so I came out with Management 101, which was my first leadership management course. And it's also my longest, 3.5 hours long. And I took a lot of stuff from my schooling and put all of that in. I call it my mini MBA because I talk a lot about MBA stuff in that course. So I could check the box, as far as he's concerned and the conversation that him and the sales team are having. I wanted to say, yep, we have a course on management. And then I took the list of things that he said he wanted, and I put that together in a course called, I think it's called Leadership Getting Started. And so because I was listening, not just taking the first thing that he said, but I was listening to everything and having that active conversation, I was able to figure out what he thought he wanted, what he really wanted, and then develop this whole big thing and come up with the right end result, which has been very rewarding. All right. One last thing is another benefit is that you have more trust. You have more trust with people when you know that people are listening, then or they know that you're listening, the trust level increases. And guess what? When the trust level increases, the opportunities increase. Whether people are like, you know what, I like that person. They pay attention to me. They really want to understand what the issues are. They don't just run off and go solve something without understanding if that's really what they're supposed to be doing. And I want that person to work in my company, on my team, on my project, whether it's employee or as a contract gig or whatever it is. That trust level can lead to more opportunities. We already talked about the 80s. Let's go back to the 80s. Back in the 80s, there was a thing called, you ever heard of this? Job security. It's like this relic that belongs in a museum because there's really no such thing as job security anymore today. But what I've learned over the years as I talk about career management is there are things that we can do to increase what I'm calling income security. And those things include networking, and they include your brand. And all of that has to do with trust, right? So how do we improve the strength of our relationships? How do we have a better personal brand? By building trust. How do we build trust? By being better listeners, right? So, all right. So as I was thinking about what to talk about today, by the way, you should know by now that you have all of April 2020 free access to all of Pluralsight. So you can go watch this course on Pluralsight for free, no cost. The best way to do it, go look for a free April Pluralsight or go to my blog, jibberjabber.com/blog. And you'll find a blog post with links that take you right to the right sign up, as opposed to going through the regular sign up, which might not get you the whole 30 days. If you're listening to this after the month of April, just reach out to me, jason@jibberjabber.com, and I might be able to get you a 30-day pass. So as I was thinking about what to talk about with listening, I was thinking about the difference between listening and hearing. Right. So one of those, hearing to me is kind of like this passive, like my eardrums are engaged and stuff comes in and it goes somewhere in my little black box and it does something. Listening is where it actually comes in and I'm thinking about it. I'm processing it. It's meaning something to me. I'm going to respond based on what is coming in, as opposed to just hearing noise, right? And so if we take that one step further, you have listening, and then something that I had heard about before, but I never really did a deep dive on until I started preparing for this course, which is active listening. And that kind of opened up the whole world of, wait a minute, there are different ways to listen. So active listening has some tactics around it, and I talk about that in the course. I'll talk about it here in a second. There's this other thing called passive listening. Passive listening is what I would say most people do today. If you're ever talking to somebody while they're on their phone and listening to you, they're probably passive listening. If somebody's talking to you and you're on your phone, you're probably passive listening. Now, I say probably because an exception is maybe you're taking notes, right? Or maybe in the course of the conversation, you're looking up something or you're doing something that's relevant to that conversation. But generally, if you're not looking at me, or I can tell that you're distracted by a TV in the background or people walking by or your phone or whatever, you're not active listening. You're passive listening. And in a passive listening environment, you have a lot more, huh? What? Like people, you'll say something that might be a little complex, like two parts to something, or maybe you even end it with asking them a question. They're like, and they're like, yeah, I'm totally paying attention. You're like, you didn't hear a thing I said, right? Because they were passive listening, and passive is as bad as it sounds. All right, back to active listening. I think it was 2 years ago, I was at a marriage retreat of all things, and the speakers were talking about this thing called reflective listening, where you're almost like a mirror. And actually, as they were doing this exercise, I thought, oh, this is so annoying. Like if I was talking to somebody and they mirrored everything that I was saying, I would be kind of annoyed, because I want to have a very thoughtful conversation and not just hear my words back from them. But they were talking about this as a very effective way of listening. I like it. I don't hate it, although I think it really can be annoying. But I want to go back to the active listening thing, because honestly, when I think about my listening course, this is the thing. There's two things that really stand out to me. This is one of them. How do you active listen? So let's say that you and I are having a conversation. Actually, I'm going to pause the active listening because I'm going to go to the other thing, and it kind of sets it up and sets the foundation for having a good conversation. One of the things that I do in my course is I talk about removing distractions. So the cell phone that's in your hand, remove it. Just put it down. Put it in your pocket. Like, don't have it. If you're at a restaurant, put it on the table and turn it upside down, please. Like, I've actually been at lunches where I'm like, hey, you know what? Just so you know, I have a really important call that I'm waiting for. So if that call comes in, I need to take it. I'll ignore the other calls, but there's this one call that I really need to take. And you could explain why, and that's fine. But generally, I want to put that distraction away. And what I tell people on the course, I said, hey, I'm going to invite you to remove your distractions right now. So turn off your email, like close it, close your browsers, minimize your browsers. Focus on this course. Take everything else away. And I think it's really important in today's world. You know, we're kind of applauded and rewarded for multitasking. And I don't know if you've ever read up on the multitasking thing, but scientists say, well, you can't multitask. There's no such thing as multitasking. You can do like microtasking, where you're doing this and then this and then this and then this and then this, and you're going back and forth to the things. But really, you can't do these two things or three or four things at the same time. Okay, and you're not making progress on anything as much as you can if you just focused on that. And so I tell people, I say, hey, turn off your phone, turn off your email, get rid of your web browser, and just focus on this course. And I say, do that with any course that you're watching anywhere. Just focus. I mean, if you're going to put the time into it, just focus on it. Okay. And okay, so the first thing is to remove your distractions, and then as you're having a conversation, the idea of active listening is kind of like the reflective listening, where somebody says something and you can say it back to them, or you can say something like, "Wait, let me make sure I understand what you're saying. Are you saying this and this and this and this?" Or are you asking me to do this? So there's this confirmation of what is going into your little black box, where you're sending it back out in your own words and saying, am I right in understanding this, or am I misunderstanding something? And it's a great tactic. When I first read about this, I thought, that's cool, but it's gonna take too much time. Really, like, I don't have the time in a conversation. I mean, it seems like that could double the amount of time that we're talking, right? And that's annoying. But go back to the idea of less reworking. What if you do that, or somebody that you're giving a project to comes back and they're like, hey, just so I understand correctly, are these the three things that you want me to do by the end of the day, or whatever, right? Imagine if we have those conversations, and then we're going to be able to get the right projects done more without having to rework them. Okay, so those are two things that really stood out to me, as the active listening and clearing your distractions. Let me go back to Frizz Clip's question about, what I say I'm not an expert. How many people will tell you to remove your distractions? Like, everybody. If anybody's preparing a 3-minute talk on how to become a better listener, removing distractions should be one of them. Everybody should know that. Everybody should talk about that, right? But the question is, how many of us are actually doing that? It goes to the idea of the fundamentals. Like, these are fundamentals of communication. fundamentals of good listening, fundamentals of intaking information. Are we actually doing the fundamentals regularly? Because when we get the fundamentals down regularly, we're ready to move to the next level, which is pretty cool. All right, one more thing. I told you there was two things that stood out, but I wrote down another thing that I think was really cool, because I've done this a lot, is too often we listen to reply. We're especially in a heated conversation or a really intense conversation. It doesn't have to be heated or intense, but sometimes we're in conversations and we're listening or hearing, waiting for them to stop talking so that we could say our thing. We're not absorbing, we're not processing, we're not thinking about what their message is. We're just waiting for them to shut up. And then we get to say our part. And so it becomes kind of like a ping pong, like, your turn. Hey, I can't wait to slam it back on you, and slam, 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 slam. And that is not good, right? I've since I've done this course and I've thought about these things, I've slowed down in my communication. I've made sure that when I'm talking with someone, because I can be intense. I don't know if you can tell, but I can be a little intense. And I've learned to slow down and really hear and listen for what they're saying. And like I said before, what they're not saying. Okay. Another thing I talk about quite a bit in the listening course is on taking notes. I mean, really, there's a fair amount of conversation in here on taking notes. When I talk about listening, it's not just two people, but I also talk about scenarios where you're at a conference, or you're on a webinar, or you're in a group, or whatever. There's a speaker or whatever, and but the idea of note taking also applies with just two people. Okay, and so what I've learned is I got so many things going on. I call them plate spinning. So I'm like holding a whole bunch of little sticks and I have plate spinning, and I got to keep moving all my plates and make sure they spin so they don't fall. I have so much going on in different areas of my life that I need to take notes. And if I don't take notes, I might remember things wrong, and I might not remember what my follow-up tasks are. And that's really important to me, that I follow through on my follow-up. And so I take notes and I talk about how to better take notes, and how to make sure that you have a system that you can easily look through your notes and figure out what you're going to follow up on and see what you already have followed up on. All right. We talked about listening for things that aren't being said, right? And one of the ways that you can kind of drill down on that is ask smart questions. Hey, I noticed that you were talking about these things. What about this? Or you didn't mention this. What about, what are you thinking about this at all? Sometimes people are just so, whether they're disorganized or they're busy or they haven't thought about it, or they haven't thought about for this conversation, but they've thought about it in other scenarios. Sometimes they just need a good prompt. Okay. So ask those questions for what they're not saying. The other thing I talk about is listen for their body language. What are they saying physically to you that they're not saying verbally? And I think it can be a little dangerous, because sometimes physically people can be imposing, and our reaction might be to be defensive, right? And that's something that I've worked on over the years. That's a skill that you can work on. But I'm trying to not let someone else's aggressiveness, especially their physical aggressiveness, change the way that I act and react, so I can actually have a good conversation, right? Let's see. As I was going through the course this morning, here's a few things that I wrote down. Listening is leadership. Now, I should mention real quick with leadership. I have a few courses on leadership now and management. And somebody wrote to me on Twitter and they said, "Oh, I don't really need any of your management courses or leadership courses because I'm not a leader." And I thought, yeah, you are. Like, everybody is a leader, especially with this whole idea that we're changing jobs every 2 to 5 years. We need to be leaders. If nothing else, we are leaders of ourselves, right? And if we're on a team, we might be the team leader. If we're not the team leader, we could still be a de facto leader, okay? Sometimes the greatest leaders are quiet and they do what they're told, but they're leading by example. And I wrote down that listening is leadership. I gave examples. I think in the 4th module, I talk about third or 4th, I talk about examples of listening with friends, which is different kind of listening, right? Listening with bosses. A great place, actually a really fun place to see people listen very poorly is presidential debates. And we're actually in 2020 where, well, we just went through a big round of presidential debates, and we're kind of going to have more. I'm not sure how that's going to play out with COVID, but man, it's so funny to me to watch a presidential debate and hear the moderator ask a question. You guys probably nodding your heads on this one. The moderator asks the question and a candidate answers a completely different question. And then everybody else picks up on that, and nobody's answering, nobody's having the conversation that the moderator is driving. Everybody's trying to get their own little sound bites in and stuff like that. And so if you're looking for an excellent example of bad listening demonstrated, go check out some of the presidential debate recordings that you can find on YouTube. Okay, one of the things I talk about in the listening course, and I actually bring it up probably in a half a dozen other courses, is debriefing. I am really, really big on debriefing. So, for example, after this recording today, if I were to debrief, I'd get a piece of paper and I'd get my pen and I would start writing down, like, here's what went well, here's what didn't go well, here's something I would change for next time. Here's somebody that I needed to follow up with. Here's some topics that could become blog posts, right? The idea of the debrief is that you do it right after the event. And so if you're in a critical meeting, I think that a big part of debriefing is to, if you took notes, go through your notes and start processing those and thinking about them. And maybe there's some idea that you started to write down and you wrote down just enough to know what you were talking about, but go through your notes and flesh it out, because in 2 or 3 or 4 weeks or months, you might have no idea what the significance of those few words or that one line was. You can debrief with other people. I love debriefing with other people, but a lot of times in our work, debriefing is something that is more solitary. So a couple notes that I wrote down about debriefing is you basically just think deeper about what happened. It could be by yourself. One of the things I did in my last job was I created a journal. It was a Google shared document. For the first few weeks, I didn't share it with anybody, and then I shared it with my boss. And we had a one-on-one, and we talked about what it was and why I was doing it. And it actually helps me keep my shared document a little cleaner, so I wouldn't put like, and this person was a jerk and they did this, you know. I didn't put anything like that because I knew that somebody else was looking at it. But the journal was an awesome place for me to debrief. A journal could be a physical book like this. Or and I love physical books. I love physical books in meetings. Or it could be an email to yourself, or like I did at my last job, it could be a Google shared doc. Don't have to share it, but at least everything's in one place. This is a place where you critically analyze what happened, and talk about what to improve on for next time, and especially putting in things for your follow-up for later. Okay, a few more things, and then we're going to wrap this up. So I want one thing that jumped out at me is I invite you, I think in the 2nd or 3rd module, to start practicing the tactics that I was talking about. And I do this a lot in my courses, but the idea is that you're not going to finish this course and say, hey, I'm really good at listening now because I just watched this course. what I want you to do is come up with a list of tactics that I give you throughout the course, a list of tactics that you can start to work on, and just choose one or two or three of them and work on those over the next week, right? And so maybe this week I'm going to work on taking better notes, or this week I'm going to work on active listening, where I'm reflecting, where I'm having that, hey, can I just summarize where we're at right now in my own words, and you can tell me if we're on the same page. That's a skill that you can practice, and so I invite you to pick up any of these very specific skills and focus on those skills for the next week or two. Get comfortable with those, make it a part of how you communicate, and then the next week or two, pick up one or two other skills, and then just grow from there. Okay, so I give some examples of lists of tactics that I learned from other people. And one of the ones that really stood out at me was a lady on YouTube. Her name is Gabby Wallace. And she teaches you how to understand people that are talking who don't have English as, or let me rephrase that, because I know some people listening don't speak English as a native tongue. When people that speak a foreign language are talking to you, how to concentrate and really listen to what they're saying. And she had a list of, I think, 5 tactics to do. And I thought it was really cool because what we need to do is understand what the sender, the other person, is really communicating to us, and what cool example or analogy to use than someone who communicates in a different way and even almost in a different language to communicate to us. And so I talk about Gabby Wallace's techniques and tactics, which I thought was pretty cool. All right. That's it. We're at 46 minutes. I just wanted to remind you that we are, for Pluralsight, not we, I'm not Pluralsight, but Pluralsight is offering their entire library for free for the month of April 2020. Today we talked about listening, and tomorrow, I need to make sure I got the right technology, but tomorrow we're going to dive into the 2 LinkedIn courses. So one is on optimizing your profile, and the other is on proactive strategies. So once you have your profile, now what do you do on LinkedIn to actually get value out of it? And then if you want to jump ahead, Wednesday, we're going to talk about Career Management 2.0, which is a presentation I've given hundreds of times on stage. And it is really one of my most absolute favorite messages. So if you have any questions, I'm jason@jibberjobber.com. I would love to hear from you. Go check out the course, Becoming a Better Listener, on Pluralsight. You can go to my blog and find the links, or just go to Google and type in Pluralsight Jason Alba or Pluralsight Listener, and you'll find a link for that. Any questions, shoot me an email, jason@jibberjobber.com.